Yeah, I have this trouble.
Morning and welcome to the Training the Training podcast with Vince Stevenson. Today it's my pleasure to interview my friend and colleague Vincent Merk. Vincent is a native of Strasbourg in France and he's lived and worked in the Netherlands since 1981. He holds dual French and Dutch citizenship, and after 38 years at Eindhoven University of Technology in various positions like senior lecturer in intercultural management, professional skills trainer, teacher of technical French, international relations officer and community advisor, Vincent took early retirement in September 2022. Since then, he's been teaching related subjects at other higher education institutions, including Skema Business School in Lille between 2001 and 2011, and currently at Audencia Business School in Nantes and the Université de Luxembourg. Vincent, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you, Vincent, for hosting me. It's always amazing when you list up all the things I've done and did my various positions at University of Technology in Eindhoven.
I'm going to ask you some questions about all of those roles that you undertook some years ago, and we'll find out a little bit more about you then. I just want to ask you a question about, tell us a little bit about when you were a young man. What were your hobbies and interests, and did they have any impact on where it took you in your professional career?
Yeah, I think it did, because I'm the youngest of 5 children, and living in Strasbourg on the border, of course, between France and Germany, with a very rich history. And I was always, I think, interested as a hobby, as the vision also to do something in intercultural stuff before I knew anything like that, because the word did not exist at the time, hardly. So I was always interested in international issues, certainly. I'm living on the border this way. So I think then it developed. And then I think the major kickoff, the major impact it had on my life was the fact that I was an exchange student to the US, to the United States. I spent a year in America at the senior in high school, and that was really I would say the trigger for my international career, I think, when I was 18. So I think this was the major trigger, certainly.
Okay, so when you were in the United States, what exactly were you doing, if you don't mind my asking?
I was in a American host family, and spending the year there, and then I went to high school, which was a senior. I was a senior in high school in a relatively, let's say, conservative middle west Corn Belt area near Peoria, Illinois, between Chicago and St. Louis, Missouri. And so it was a rural area, rather small town. And for me, coming from a cosmopolitan city like Strasbourg, where everything was different, clearly, everything. It was a great experience, certainly.
Oh, I'm sure it was a great experience. Now,
when you're 18,
when I moved from Manchester to London, I experienced a certain culture shock. Did you feel a culture shock when you moved to the United States? And of course, when you started working in the Netherlands, did you feel a culture shock in that experience?
Well, as well, because at the time, then I went there with a scholarship. I had studied next to my main topics, public administration. I had studied Dutch as well as a minor, just more for fun, something. And then because I had done that, I had this scholarship to go to the Netherlands at the University of Amsterdam to pursue studies. And it was, at the time, it was very exotic, a French student there. Well, wow. And then later on as well, being in my career at the university, a Frenchman, that was quite exotic. Now it's just part of the scenery in a way. And so at the time, it was quite something. So I certainly had a kind of a culture shock. Being there as an international, what we call that, as a foreign student at the time. Yeah.
And what was the which language were you speaking when you got to the Netherlands? Is I know English is like an international language, but is that the language that they speak in these European universities? Because I see a lot of English young English students who've gone to Utrecht and Amsterdam and Maastricht, and I just wonder, English people aren't great at languages because we're a bit lazy, very lazy actually, and I'm just wondering. I just suspect that a lot of these courses are in English. Otherwise, most English people just wouldn't go.
Yeah, no, currently, of course, English is a very important language in business and education in the Netherlands. At my university, everything is now taught in English in technology and engineering. Everything is taught in English, basically. At the time, I mean, talking about 45 years ago, when I arrived there, everything was in Dutch, clearly. So, and I had studied Dutch before. So when I arrived there, I was already fluent in Dutch, which helped a lot. Yeah. So and then then I improved my Dutch, of course, to the level I am now of native, of a near native. But at the time, there was no English whatsoever. No.
Okay. Well, like I said, I think I experienced this huge culture shock just moving from Manchester to London. So we do seem to speak a slightly different language down in London than we do up north, as it were. So in my introduction, I presented a number of your diverse professional accomplishments. Could you talk us through the pros and cons, the highs and the lows of those roles, and what did you learn from it, and how did that affect your teaching?
Yeah. I started. When I arrived, I did some 2 years of postgrad studies at the University of Amsterdam, and then I had this scholarship for 2 years. So first year, and then because I was a good student, I could have the scholarship the second year. But then after that, I needed to go back, because when you have a scholarship, you're supposed to go back to the university of origin. But I didn't. I just stayed because at the time it was not a big issue. Just with the European market anyway, the common market. So I just stayed and started with odd jobs, and then after very quickly I had this position at the University of Technology in Eindhoven, which I started as a teacher of technical French, because I also had this in my baggage. So I studied there, and then but very quickly I developed what was actually my real passion, and my experience, and my knowledge, and experience at the time was little, but developed, of course, by my real expertise, which was what we would call now intercultural management, intercultural communication, interculturality. At the time, we just didn't call that much, but it was discovered that this was my real preference. So I started with this teacher of French, and then I developed, set up actually everything which was more or less we'd call intercultural, international, diversity, inclusion, we would say nowadays at the university. So I've had indeed various jobs there, but always in a continuum of, let's say, developing communication between people, developing certain attitudes, viewpoints, all through my career there. So that was, but I started as a teacher of technical French, indeed, for the engineers.
Mhm. Okay. Now those projects and those diverse disciplines that you worked under. So going back, I think you mentioned sort of 40, 45 years. How have you seen the progress in this diversity and inclusion space?
Yeah, you can imagine 45 years ago, that was, as I said, everything was taught in Dutch at the university anyway. The society was not internationalized as it is now. Even the Netherlands, which is a country which has always been open to immigration and emigration, by the way, are both. Yeah. The Dutch are certainly people of immigrants as well. You can see the colonial empire, or the rest of it, so to say, around the world. So the situation was, of course, completely different than it is now. Pros and cons, clearly. There were not so much internationalization. As I said before, I was a strange bird to be there at the Frenchman at the university. There were not many international students or staff. Certainly not like now. So it was it was an extremely learning experience to me, because as I was this French student coming in, fluent in Dutch, but still, I had to try to find my way. So that's why I had different positions very often simultaneously. And what I've learned is just that, if you believe in something, you can actually you can reach it. So by working hard and being dedicated to the good cause, I managed to set up everything which is intercultural at the university. I think this is one of my deeds. It went with ups and downs, clearly, but I think now there is not only thanks to me, but I was one of the players, but now it is in a way in engineering that the engineers, the modern engineer also need what we would call soft skills. I call that professional skills, essential skills, sustainable skills, and not soft. I don't like this word of soft, but I call that professional skills. So clearly, I think this is a mindset now that has been developed, and I modestly contributed to that at the university, certainly. Yeah.
Okay, now you mentioned the word modesty, which is it's a word that I'm not familiar with, but I think I've met you, and we chatted a number of times in Ben Almadina, and I just feel there's probably some stories that I've not heard from you about how you overcame certain difficulties, and is there anything that you're particularly two things proud of professionally in your work over the years, and proud of yourself in what you achieved, is and that's in all modesty.
Yeah, this is in all modesty. Yeah. Well, humility. I think it's part of the right attitude. Yeah.
I think it's okay to be
stuff. Yeah.
It's okay to be proud of things that you've achieved that have helped others, I think. So
what do you want to say?
Oh, well, tell me about a project that maybe sometimes I've been dragged into projects that I really didn't feel were what I in my line, as it were. But once you kind of get into them and you see opportunities, and things change, and you have that opportunity to influence situations and people to get them great outcomes. That's really what I'm getting at.
Yeah, no, that's certainly something I can talk about for a long time. But because I was given this opportunity at the university to indeed starting as a teacher of French, was my first position, and I quickly developed this intercultural vision, but also in teaching that we need more than only language. Culture also plays a role transversally. It's present everywhere, as we know. So I'm talking about 40 years ago. That was 35 years ago. This was quite an interesting development. Of course, it was I call it modestly, because it was step by step. And I guess I was one of the players, certainly not the only one, but we were a bunch of people, with kind of a vision in this respect, that culture would play a role as well, intercultural communication. The university was internationalizing a lot at that time, through the past 15 years, of course, enormously. Being taught in English, we realized that speaking English and teaching in English doesn't mean that that it's all the same and that everybody understands it. So culture plays a role. The context, as we know, plays a role. Cultural differences need to be addressed, to be managed, etc. So all the whole interculturality came in, and I was one of those players in the university, and I could see the same happening with colleagues that I had through CETA, but also through inter university alliances. I could see that people would also have the same practice, the same vision, the same developing the same experience. So it was very interesting to see that in the last 30 years in Europe how things developed in comparable situations. The Netherlands has always been a country open, as I mentioned before, and it was open for influences from outside, certainly. Let's call it English. But what kind of English? English, not so much the culture, but certainly the language. And in technology anyway, this is... So there were very interesting developments, and I'm very happy in a way. As you were mentioning what I was doing, I was very happy that I did quite a few things, ranging from simple lecturing or simple lectures for students and staff to full courses, compulsory courses in intercultural management that I did for quite some time in the Master of Electrical Engineering. Can you see that? And there were people with a vision that as well who said, those engineers need some intercultural stuff, because the modern engineer, especially the Dutch engineer, is someone who most likely will have an international career, because the number of Dutch engineers operating only on a domestic market is very low. So they will, as Dutch engineers, they will most likely work internationally. So it was, the good practice of preparing them to have an international career, and that I think now it's a given. Yeah.
Okay. Now you worked a long time at Utrecht. I keep saying Utrecht. It's not Utrecht. Where was it?
Eindhoven. Yeah.
Eindhoven. Eindhoven. That's the one. Correct. Yes.
That's okay.
Eindhoven. So, but now you're, semi-retired. I know you still got your hand in a number of projects. So tell us about the things that you're working on now, and what kind of joy do they bring you?
Yeah, I've along my university career, I've always also worked as an independent trainer consultant for businesses. So I had this double hat, which I extremely enjoyed, and I know other people around me, colleagues, friends, also have this double hat, and I think it's very valuable. Sometimes it's difficult in an organization; they all want you at the same time, so you need to to split yourself, so to say. But I've always enjoyed that very much, and I've kept that in a way at the moment as well. Although I'm now retired officially from the university. Indeed, for now 3 years, something. Yeah, I've been that. So I enjoyed that very much, and I like this combination of what I call the academia, young people, smart people, of course, that we have, engineers. I like this community, this audience, but I also liked what I call the real world. I also did dealing with managers, different public. So I enjoyed this double hat a lot, and I think this also is very valuable for your own learning, your own development as well, to have access to both communities in a way. So, and I can now keep your question was about now, and I'm pseudo retired, and I keep on working with my own consultancy, so to say. And I don't teach actually now at the moment anymore in university. I've only have both paid occupation, paid job, and also doing a lot of volunteering work in intercultural associations. French community in the Netherlands, do a lot of volunteering there. So I like that, but I'll keep the combination. Although now I don't teach anymore in the university, I still work for the businesses, let's say. Yeah, and I like that. So retirement is a it's a faraway concept for me at the moment.
Yeah. My wife mentions it a few times, and I say retirement is a dirty word. I would be so bored, having had a very busy life, which I've loved.
Exactly. We are a few of those people around there.
Okay, now just cast your mind back a few months to where we met in Ben Al Medina at the conference, the DEI conference, and I attended and thoroughly enjoyed your UNESCO storytelling session. What makes you so committed to that initiative. And again, could you tell us for the listeners, just give us some more details about the UNESCO storytelling, why it grabs your interest so greatly, and what can other people do to try and get involved in that?
Yeah, and the UNESCO storytelling, as the name suggests, was initiated by UNESCO and particularly by Dara Dirov, one of our peers, colleagues, respected colleague in the field, and she developed that on behalf of UNESCO, and so it's a property of UNESCO. That's why it also has a free access. Put it this way. It also carries on the sustainable development goals of UNESCO. So it's a free access methodology, open dialogue, in which you put people in circles, as the name suggests, and then they have, according to a certain procedure, they will tell their own stories, and then people will not react spontaneously. It's to develop. It's a methodology to develop listening for understanding, and not just listening to reply and say something. No, that comes at the end of the process, as you've experienced yourself, Vincent, indeed, and. So yeah, that's I was attracted by the methodology because it's a simple thing to set up. It needs little preparation and the facilitator. You put people in a circle that tell their stories according to a certain procedure, and then you debrief that. You as a facilitator, you're sure that you make sure that it goes along the line, the rules, so to say. So I've found it very attractive to set up and to stimulate this open dialogue, this intercultural communication process in which people, are given a platform to tell their stories, and without being interrupted all the time by someone. Oh yeah. Very important. So I was I getting involved. I don't know, not so long ago, 4 or 5 years ago. I think it was also during the post-COVID or during COVID. I think we started online, so it's something you can do online. It's probably to do that on site, obviously, because you have more interaction, but you can still do it online. And I did it a few times online, and I've now, I would say, an experienced facilitator of the story of the UNESCO Story Circle process. Still very enjoyed very much, and looking forward to doing. We'll do it again this year, this coming year. This year we'll do it in various settings as well, academic or more business-like. It's just the context. It's the way you shape it. With academics, with peers, or with students, you always adapt to the audience, clearly. So I think it's a very attractive and free access, easy to organize. I'm really stimulating people, and I'm telling that all the time. Do it yourself. You always provide, the material, the slide, and tell people to do it. And stimulate participation, and also setting it up, because it's relatively easy to do. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I spoke to Andrea Martinez Kellyth a few weeks
Yes.
ago, our colleague, and she did a very useful and very short presentation in Ben Almadina as well. And I'm going to invite you both together, and that would be great. But could you mentioned the rules? Could you be a little bit more specific about the rules for those people who aren't completely familiar with this?
Yeah, I call that rule because there's a certain procedure to follow. Indeed,
Procedure,
procedure. Yeah, you have three, let's say, three prompts, three stages. You start introducing yourself very quickly, clearly. You have a circle of 5, 6 people, more or less, and you put them in a circle, literally, with no table, so that they're sitting on chairs, that no obstacle of a table can be seen as a barrier. So people just sit there, and then someone starts, and then you have a first introduction round in which you briefly introduce yourself. You're saying 3 words by yourself, what is typical of yourself, to introduce yourself, and then again, each participant will tell their own story. Which is something which is supposed to be an intercultural encounter, personal, not something from the literature. And then you will just, listen for understanding. That's very important. You will listen to each other. That's the second stage. And the third stage, you will just react very quickly, briefly, and say, what impacted me in your story was such and such and such. And these are the three, let's say, three stages in which you want to make sure the facilitator that it goes this way, and people will react this way. Yeah. So that's why you need to have a bit of a rule procedure, and then you come with you hear amazing stories, people within the circle, and then it develops. Yeah, it develops. What I said, listening for understanding. It develops respect, curiosity, empathy, patience. And everybody has their own turn, so you don't interrupt. So it's really a good listening activity. And what we call open dialogue. UNESCO is of course stimulating those things. So I like it. I think it's an easy way to promote, stimulate open dialogue, intercultural communication across all kind of borders, generation. Again, across all diversity aspects, gender, generation, professions, everything. You usually have people with a great diversity, so that it's a great activity. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm going to make an effort to run this in London, because we've got a really hugely diverse population here, and I know that a lot of the minorities feel quite isolated. And where I actually work in North
Yeah.
London, it, it's a council building, but most of the people who work at the council building, they don't work for the council. They work for charities, NGOs, and voluntary
Yeah,
organisations.
exactly.
And again, that diversity is represented in the office. And I'm currently trying to organise an event with some of those groups that work there, and I would love to trial this in London.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. It's relatively easy to set up. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. How many sessions have you run? And I know, I'm sure the feedback's been great. What would make an ideal, if you could choose an ideal audience, what would it be? If that's possible. That's probably a very broad question.
Yeah, I think an ideal audience could also be a bit boring. You never know. I mean, okay, well, first of all, you know, because you're supposed to prepare yourself. You're supposed to know your audience, okay? That's always a very good, important thing in education, in intercultural communication
Mm.
management, training, coaching, everything. You need to know your audience. Yeah, that's the very first rule. So you have those easy audiences, like your peers. Well, we had a innovation and diversity conference, diversity innovation conference. That's the kind of easy audience with your peers. You do that with your colleagues, maybe, or that can be the kind of the maybe not ideal, but the easy audience. Yeah. I think the ideal audience is especially when you have a great variety, a great diversity, because this is where the most striking stories will probably emerge. You need to know the audience, because sometimes you need to be careful, because it's an activity which asks the participants to come out of their comfort zone. Clearly, you will tell a personal story about yourself. Sometimes it's a negative story, sometimes it's a positive encounter with intercultural. So that's certainly something that you have to be careful with, because sometimes people will not dare to do it. If you do with first year students who have just entered the college, the university college or whatever, and are not yet ready to tell their own story, it can become difficult, because people will not participate willingly if you impose that to a class. So you need to know that. And sometimes with students it can be tricky, because then they just don't have such an experience, or are not willing, ready to do so. So you need to be careful. Usually with peers, I've done that with CETAR, different CETAR bodies, and also in Malaga, it was the kind of easy way. I've had a few situations. I've done, I don't know how many now, but I've done quite a few, yeah, And I've had a few situations in which people would not indeed so easily come out of their comfort zone and tell the story, or just skip their turn and say, well, I don't have anything to say. I'll just wait, and then along the way, and then you say, oh yeah, then you come up with a story. You listen to the other people's story, and then you come up with stories. So I've done it in Asia, in Europe, in you name it. So that's also a cultural aspect, of course. In some cultures, people may not right away spontaneously tell their stories, avoid a certain situation, avoid too much hierarchy. Having professors, teachers, lecturers, and students may be awkward for the student because there's a strong hierarchy. So you need to know that all. Yeah.
Okay. On the other hand, have you experienced situations where the question has triggered maybe a traumatic experience?
Yeah, I've seen. I haven't experienced yet a very traumatic situation in which someone would talk about a trauma or create a trauma by telling the story, that the others will react. Because it might remind them of a situation as well. So I haven't had that yet. I've had a few times where there was some heavy reaction from people, which you're supposed to be listening only and then react at the end, as you've experienced yourself. So I've had situations in which people were indeed triggered and pushed to react to something because they were for or against the situation or what was being told. So you needed a facilitator to keep that, of course, within the lines, which usually happens well. Again, it's knowing your audience in advance is very important, and expect
Yeah.
what can happen. But you never know, and that makes it also a learning experience. It makes it interesting because you never know what's going to happen in a way.
Yeah. Many years ago, I say many years ago, I don't know, probably about 10 years ago, I used to work with a charity, and it was a homeless charity, but a lot of the people had various difficulties, educational difficulties. They possibly had, addiction issues, gambling
Yeah.
issues, drugs, alcohol. Uh, and a lot of these people they'd lost everything. They'd lost their house, they'd lost their
Mm.
family, and my job, or the role that I'd taken on, was to help them with their communication and to write CVs and try and prepare them if they got a job interview, try and get them back into mainstream society. That was the role.
Yeah.
And they would, so usually I'd be working in a very small group, and just voluntarily sometimes people would tell you the most extraordinary stories. And sometimes you kind of feel a little bit in shock, and sometimes you just think, wow, that must have taken a lot of
Yeah.
courage
Yeah.
to say that in front of these people. And sometimes just getting that off that person's chest, that
Yeah.
story, that experience, is kind of brings
Absolutely.
relief.
Yeah.
Which is I think this is why I'm very drawn to this UNESCO
Yeah.
storytelling. I think I'm going to have a go with it. I think
No,
I'd
please do. I
really
mean,
enjoy
it
it.
is. Please do. I mean, it's amazing how you can still stimulate people to tell their stories. If you need to create, of course, this is kind of what we call psychological safe environment
Yeah.
by stating that at the beginning, that it's confidential and please tell your story. Right? It's not that easy for some people, but I think you need the facilitator. You need to create that environment. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, now let's move on from the storytelling, and let's talk about co-created conferences, because you in your in the document you sent me, you made a few interesting comments about co-created conferences, and let's have a quick chat about what we both feel about that. So, what do you think about co-created conferences?
Sorry. Yeah, I think it's a great concept.
Mm.
And it in a way, it is the essence of interculturality, because uh, uh, you co-create an environment, you co-create content, you co-create practices, processes. So I think the whole it is putting into practice in a way within a conference what you preach as an educator, as an interculturalist. So I think this is something which should be developed a lot more, and I think this is what with Anna and in the conference we attended. So this was a great experience when you're part of the development. It's a great. I've been to many conferences where you don't have a say, you just do your job.
Yeah.
And that was a great experience. Yeah, so I'm very much in favor of this co-creating all along the line. Actually,
Yeah, I think let's just talk a little bit more in detail about that for those people who aren't familiar with co-created. So we have regular conferences where you got a lineup of speakers. It's usually in one room, and it's just a linear process. And those people who are doing the speaking, they usually get paid. They usually have the travel expenses and all of that, which is great. I've done all of that. I'm not knocking
sometimes
it.
it feels good.
Yeah. But having said that, I've done 4 co-created conferences now. Two with the DEI group and 2 with Trainers Forum group. And I've been to some fantastic places that I would never have gone to otherwise, like Wrocław and Bergamo. And I've been to Barcelona a few times, but these places. But I feel that this idea of trainers training trainers. I actually run a trainer course in London. But this idea of trainers training trainers on these DEI situations, and in the trainers forum, we don't talk about DEI so much, but although it's as part of the group ethos, we talk about training them in various disciplines. But you often have like 3 or 4 different streams running, so you have to choose which events you're going to participate in. So not only are you an educator, you're a student, and you're expected to show up for other people's events. Now, I think that's great. I felt, I've been running my own company for a long time, and since COVID, I've been running it on my own. And I'm not going to say that I feel isolated. I'm fairly resilient and very capable of working on my own. But going to these co-created events and meeting new people, and we're all there for the same reason, and that's to kind of educate each other. I just find there's a greater sense of togetherness. There's a really nice bond. I've been to the regular type conferences and really never speak to anyone.
Yeah.
And you're just the speaker there. People might ask you a few questions before or after your session, and then they're gone. And but to be together usually for 2 or 3 days and work together very, very closely and support other trainers as well day by day, I found that quite inspirational, and I'm just surprised it hasn't happened earlier. But I'm delighted to have been part of it.
Yeah, I think it's a relatively new process in which we put into practice what we want to reach. This intercultural, starting from a multicultural vision and moving into inter and trans. And I think this is a great process, and I enjoyed that very much. And you co-create, and you're part of the process, which is very important.
Yeah, I think hanging around with really smart people for any length of time, some of it rubs off on you.
Yeah.
Well, at least
And
I hope. At least
small
I hope
scale,
so. Okay, so we're coming to the end, Vincent. So I'm just going to ask you a couple of final questions. So, where do you see the future of DEI training? Will it one day have the global impact that we're working towards?
Good question. We're going through rough times in a geopolitical situation. If I look at that, what was maybe accepted some years ago is now being questioned by political powers, by certain people, certain circles. I see myself, many of us, we moved from what we would call intercultural communication management. We moved into the diversity and inclusion, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, all those acronyms and various aspects of that all, and I think this is still very much relevant, even more relevant than than a few years ago. If you look at the general situation in the world,
Okay.
natural,
Now,
a natural process for us. I see now, if I look at what happens in Europe versus other part of the world, I think we still have a great future in this respect here. And I hope so. Sometimes you just need to call it differently. Then that helps as well. So I'm still very optimistic and confident that this is what we need in the world. The usual, let's say for us, maybe the concept of respect, empathy, patience, openness, open-mindedness, a growth mindset, all those concepts of cooperation, collaboration between people across borders, all kind of borders. And generation now is becoming also a very important aspect of that. So I think this is something which it's not, to me, not so much the question whether it's going to develop or not more. I think this is our reality, and whether you are for or against it, this is our real life. As we developed, we work, collaborate across all kind of borders, and this will stay in a way. It's not going to. There are also, of course, some political trends to put yourself back and to de-globalize things. I think fair enough, but we will of course keep on working, collaborating, and whatever you call that. Yeah, we need to have frameworks, practices to develop along those lines. So in this respect, I'm optimistic.
okay. Well, look, I'm delighted that you're constantly working on the future of interculturality. I'm glad it's in safe hands, and I'm glad that you and I know so many wonderful people in that space.
Yeah.
So, Vincent, it's been great talking to you today. Thank you so much, but we're going to have to leave it there. But would you please stay on the line so I can thank you personally?
Sorry, say that again.
Sorry, it's been a great talking to you
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
We're going to have to leave it there because,
Okay.
but please stay on the line because
Oh,
I'd
stay
like
on there.
to,
Sorry, I didn't understand.
yeah,
Language.
stay on the line. Yeah, stay on the line.
I'm staying. Okay.
Stay logged in so I can thank you personally. And I have
Great.
a couple more podcasts next week, and I will be posting those very, very shortly. So, Vincent, thank you so much. I'll see you on the other side.
You're very welcome, Vincent. It was a
Thank you.
pleasure to have you
Cheers. My pleasure.
together.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you too. Yeah.